They had made the calculation that most people make when they have decided to do something mean in a parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon. Nobody watching, no connection, no consequence. An elderly woman's car at the community center on Maple Street in Dalton, Georgia. A group of 3 teenagers, done with it in under 2 minutes, gone before she came out. They did not look at the gas station across the street. They did not notice the man who came out of the convenience store at 3:55 and stopped on the sidewalk and watched them get on their bikes and leave. They did not think about the chapter meeting that man was driving to in Dalton that evening, or about the 40 riders who would be at that meeting, or about what that man's grandmother had looked like in a driveway in Savannah in 2015 when nobody had gotten around to fixing a porch step. They made their calculation, and they rode away. By the next morning, 40 motorcycles were parked on Ridge Road outside Loretta Banks's house. Not because of anything the teenagers had planned for, not because of anyone who had been looking for an opportunity to address what they had done, because a 79-year-old woman came out of the Dalton Community Center carrying her leftover box from the senior social and found her car sitting wrong, and put her hand on the roof to steady herself and held her useless keys. And a community center director named Shirley walked a man with a death's head patch across a parking lot and said, "Do you know anything about cars?" The man's name was Mac DeVille, and he had been riding since 8 that morning from Chattanooga on the highway south, heading for the chapter meeting in Dalton at 7 that evening. He was 52 years old, road captain, with the specific attentiveness of someone who has been on the road long enough to read a situation before he has all the information. The posture of the people in a parking lot, the direction of someone's eyes, the quality of stillness around a car that is sitting lower than it should. He had pulled into the gas station on Maple Street at 3:55 for fuel and a coffee, and he was walking back across the parking lot when he heard the sound of Shirley's voice raised to carry across the lot. Not shouting, but reaching, asking one question to the first person who might know the answer. He went over. He was a stocky man with gray in his beard and a cut that had been through 15 years of road, and he looked at the car, the flat fronts of the Sonata, the clean cuts in the sidewalls, and he looked at the elderly woman beside Shirley, who was standing with one hand on her car and the other holding a foam takeout box, and whose face had the expression of a woman making peace with a situation. Before she has finished reacting to it, he crouched beside the tire and looked at the cut. He stood up. "Who has the car?" he asked Shirley. Shirley said it was Mrs. Banks. He said, "Mrs. Banks, how long have you been coming here?" 3 years, Loretta said. "Every Tuesday." He looked at Shirley. "Has this happened before?" "Third time this fall," Shirley said. "The police know." Mac nodded. He took out his phone. He had 2 calls to make. "Before we find out who those calls went to and what 40 riders were doing on Ridge Road the next morning, hit subscribe and drop your city and state in the comments. I want to see where this story reaches today. A kitchen in Georgia, a living room in Tennessee, a porch in New Brunswick. Leave your city. I read every one. And if you know what it is to be the person who is stranded, not only in a parking lot, but in the general sense of managing more than can be managed alone, this story is for you. Stay with us. Because what Loretta Banks told Shirley when the first bike pulled into her driveway the next morning is the part that needs to be said. Loretta Banks was 79 years old. She had been born in Dalton, grown up in Dalton, married Franklin Banks in Dalton in 1968 in the First Baptist Church on 5th Street, and raised their daughter Claire in the house on Ridge Road that Franklin had built in 1972 with his brother, Gerald. She had worked at the county library for 22 years, and then as a bookkeeper for a plumbing company for 16 more. And she had retired at 68, and she had not, in the 12 years since, stopped being useful. She was on the senior center's meal coordination committee and the church flower arrangement rotation, and she had an opinion about the library's digital catalog that she had shared with the new director in a constructive letter. Franklin had died in October 2 years ago. He had been 82, and he had been going more slowly in the year before he went. And Loretta had spent that year the way a woman spends a year when she understands what is coming and chooses to be fully present for it rather than managing her own grief from a distance. She had been present. She had been beside him. She had been there. After, she had been alone in the house on Ridge Road. She talked to Claire in Nashville on Sundays and holidays. Claire had offered to come and stay for a while, and Loretta had said no, that she was fine. And she was fine, and the specific quality of that fineness was the quality that comes from having managed things for a long time and intending to keep managing them. The Sonata was the thing she was most precise about. She had it serviced every 6 months at the same garage on Industrial Boulevard, and she kept records in the glove compartment, and she drove it, with the care of someone who understood that the car was the difference between being a person who goes where she needs to go and a person who waits for other people to take her. She went to the senior social on Tuesdays, and the pharmacy on Thursdays, and the grocery store on Saturdays, and church on Sundays, and she drove herself to all of these things, and she expected to continue to do so. She had come out of the community center at 3:50 on a Tuesday afternoon with the leftover box and her purse and the wool coat she'd put on when the October air started getting serious, and she had seen the car from 12 feet away, sitting wrong on its front end. And she froze. She stood on the parking lot asphalt, and she knew what she was looking at before she reached it. She walked to it. She put her hand on the roof. She stood there with her keys in her hand, trembling slightly, not from the cold, from the specific shock of something you've managed going wrong in a way you cannot immediately manage. And she did the arithmetic. The tow truck would take 90 minutes. Claire was 3 hours away. It was 4 o'clock and getting cold. She had not cried. The parking lot was silent around her, only the sound of the October wind and the faint noise of Maple Street traffic, and she stood in that silence, with her hand on the roof, for a long moment before she did anything else. Then, she called Claire first, and Claire had said she was coming. And Loretta had said she absolutely was not to come 3 hours on a Tuesday, and Claire had said she was coming anyway, and Loretta had said to hold on and let me figure out the situation, and she had called 911, and she had called the tow truck. Then she had let Shirley walk her back inside. She had been inside for 10 minutes when Shirley brought the man in the leather cut through the door. His name was Mac DeVille, and his grandmother's name was Estelle. Estelle had lived alone in a house in Savannah from the time Mac's grandfather died in 1998 until she died in 2017. She had been a small, precise woman with strong opinions about most things and a specific capability for managing that the family had always found reassuring, and that Mac, in the years since, had come to understand was also a form of armor. In January 2015, Estelle had fallen on the icy porch steps of her house in Savannah. Steps that Mac had been meaning to come and fix for 2 months, had told her he was going to come and fix, had not yet come and fixed, and she had lain on the cold concrete for 2 hours before the neighbor found her. She had not been badly hurt. She had a bruised hip and a bruised dignity. She had not called anyone after the fall because she did not want to worry anyone, which was the armor again, the specific management style of a woman who had been managing alone for 17 years. He had driven to Savannah the day after the call from the neighbor. He had fixed the porch steps. He had fixed 3 other things he found while he was there that Estelle had not mentioned. He had driven home and thought about the 2 hours of her lying on the cold concrete while he was in Nashville doing other things. And he had been thinking about it. in one form or another, ever since. He had been thinking about it when Shirley asked him about the car. There were 3 of them who had done it. They had been identified on the community center security camera. 2 cameras, which is 2 more than they had planned for. Which is what happens when you make assumptions about a building that has been updated since 2019. The camera footage showed the faces and the bikes and the license plate of the motorcycle belonging to Tyler Max, who had also been involved in the Route 7 situation, though nobody knew that yet. Wait, that's a different script. Let me continue. The 3 teenagers were identifiable. The police had their names. The police had documentation on 2 prior incidents at the same location, the mirror and the key scratch from September and August. The problem was not identification. The problem was that the Dawes office was backed up, and the detective assigned had been given the case alongside 17 others and had not yet elevated it. One of the chapter's members was an off-duty detective from the Gordon County Sheriff's Office named Craig Bowles, who had been in the chapter for 9 years, and who, when Mac told the chapter that evening what had happened to Loretta's car, said he knew the detective handling the case and would make a call. The call happened Wednesday morning. The case was elevated. By Thursday afternoon, all 3 teenagers had been charged with felony criminal mischief under Georgia's enhanced statute for crimes against persons over 65. Mac had sat with Loretta at the community center until the tow truck arrived. He had sat in the chair across from her with a coffee Shirley had brought him, and he had asked about Franklin. Because she had mentioned Franklin when she was describing how long she had been coming to the senior social, and Loretta had told him about Franklin in the way that people tell things when they have been carrying them for 2 years, and someone has asked a genuine question. She talked for 40 minutes. She talked about Franklin and the house he built and the library and the plumbing company and the senior social and Claire and the Sundays. She talked about the gutters that needed cleaning and the handrail on the front steps that she had been meaning to get someone to look at, and the board on the back porch that had gone soft and was getting softer. Mac listened. He noted all of it. When the tow truck came, he called 2 chapter members to follow the truck to the shop and coordinate the tire installation. He helped Loretta into his truck. She had protested, and he had said Mrs. Banks in a tone that was not unkind, but was final, and he drove her to Ridge Road himself. At her front door, she put her hand on the handrail, and it moved. The bolt had pulled from the wood. Mac said nothing. He held the door while she went inside. He looked at the handrail for a long moment. Then he went back to his truck, and he called the chapter. He said, "There's a woman on Ridge Road. I need 12 people who can work tomorrow." He had 32 volunteers in 40 minutes. The remaining 8 called in overnight. Engines, 40 of them, coming down Ridge Road in Dalton, Georgia, at 8 in the morning on a Wednesday in October. Not all at once, not in dramatic convoy, but in 1s and 2s and small groups that had organized themselves through the chapter's overnight messages and converged on the county road and arrived together in the way of a group that has been given an address and shown up at it. They filled the driveway and the street's edge and the gravel shoulder along the fence, and they cut their engines in sequence, and the October morning went silent around them. The specific silence that follows many engines stopping, full and sudden, like a door closing on something large. Loretta Banks heard them from the kitchen, where she was on her first cup of coffee. She had been awake since 6. She was always up at 6, and she had spoken to Claire on the phone at 7, who was driving from Nashville and would arrive by noon, and she had made her bed and watered her kitchen herb pots and done the things she did in the morning. And then she had heard the sound of 40 engines on Ridge Road. She went to the window. She whispered, "Lord." She said it to the kitchen, to herself, to the driveway full of motorcycles in the October morning. The yard was silent, the riders standing beside their bikes, the neighborhood still waking up. the only sound the October wind in the sweet gum tree at the corner of the yard. Mac came to the door. She opened it before he knocked. She looked at him. She looked at the driveway. "You didn't need to bring all these people," she said. "Mrs. Banks," Max said. He looked at the handrail. "Who's been watching out for this house?" She looked at the handrail. "Me," she said. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "We're going to help with that today." The chapter worked from 8 until 2. The handrail came first. Mac had brought the hardware himself, the specific anchor bolts the wood required, and he reset it in 40 minutes while 2 other members cleared the front walk of debris. The gutters took 3 men and 2 ladders, and most of the morning, decades of oak and sweet gum leaves compacted to a dense mat that had been pushing water over the fascia for at least 1 wet season. The gutters were cleaned, and the 2 sections where the brackets had pulled from the board were reattached properly. The back porch board was replaced by noon. A member named Pete had lumber in his truck, which he had loaded the night before based on Mac's description, and the fit was good. While this was happening, 2 members drove the Sonata to the tire shop on Industrial Boulevard and back, and the car sat in the driveway by 11 with 4 new tires and an alignment that the shop threw in, because they had heard, through the mechanic who had taken Mac's second call the previous afternoon, what had happened. At 11:15, a gray Volkswagen pulled into the driveway. Claire Banks, 49 years old, a pediatric nurse from Nashville, had driven 3 hours and 30 minutes and had not called ahead because she wanted to see it herself before she decided what she was walking into. She walked into 40 men working on her mother's house. A writer she did not know handed her a coffee cup. He said, "She's inside making sandwiches." She said to tell you, the handrail is fixed. Claire looked at the handrail. She looked at the driveway. She looked at the man with the coffee cup. Something broke in her in the specific way that things break when you have been worrying about someone for a long time and have arrived to find that the worry for this morning has been addressed. She pressed her lips together. She took the coffee. "Thank you," she said. "The tires are done too," the man said. He went back to work. Loretta made lunch for 42 people. This was not something she had been asked to do, and it was not something that was expected of her, and it was exactly what she was going to do, because it was what she did when she had people in her house. She made sandwiches, and she made sweet tea, and she made the peanut butter cookies she had been making since 1975, and she set it all up on the dining room table, and she called everyone in. The chapter ate lunch in Loretta Banks's dining room, standing and sitting on the windowsills and the stairs, because there was not room to accommodate 42 people at a table. And they were respectful of the space and the house and the photographs of Franklin on the mantel. And one of them, she did not catch his name, picked up a photograph and asked who it was, and she told him about Franklin for 15 minutes while he stood and listened and ate his sandwich. At 2 o'clock, Mac found her in the kitchen. He said, "I want to show you one more thing." He took her outside. A chapter member named Dan, he did this professionally, had a security company in Dalton, had installed a doorbell camera, front and back. Claire had purchased both units online Wednesday morning and driven them from Nashville in her car. Dan had mounted and configured them while the rest of the chapter worked. Loretta looked at the doorbell camera. She looked at Mac. "Those teenagers," she said. "They come by again, and someone will see them." "Yes, ma'am," Mac said. "Good," she said. She went back inside to put away the food. Claire found Mac at his bike when the chapter was getting ready to leave. She said, "I want to know how to reach you, in case she needs something." "She won't call me," Mac said. "She'll manage." "I know," Claire said. "I want your number anyway." He gave it to her. She said, How did you know about the gutters? The porch board? She told me, Max said. At the community center. While we were waiting, Claire looked at him. She doesn't tell me things like that. She doesn't want me to worry. I know, Max said. She told me because she wasn't trying to manage me. Claire stood with that for a moment. The engines were starting around them, the chapter loading up in the October afternoon, one by one, the sound of them filling Ridge Road again, and then turning west and fading. Thank you, Claire said. Yes, ma'am, Max said. He started the road cane. He pulled out of the driveway, and he turned south on Ridge Road, and he thought about Estelle, which he did sometimes. And he thought about the porch steps in Savannah and the 2 hours, and about all the things he had been getting around to since. He thought about a handrail that moved under an old woman's hand, and a man who had been at a gas station across the street at the right moment, and had done the thing he had been practicing doing ever since the winter of 2015. He thought, it doesn't fix it. He thought, it doesn't have to. Loretta Banks called Claire on Sunday, the regular call. Claire asked how the week was going. Loretta said the house was good. She said the handrail was solid, and the gutters were clean, and the porch board was fixed, and the camera was watching the front door. And that it felt, she said, like the house was taken care of again. Like someone had been paying attention to it. She said, you know, I've been managing alone for 2 years. I know, Mom, Claire said. I'm all right at it, Loretta said. I am. But it's nice to have someone notice what needs doing. She was quiet for a moment. That man noticed, she said. She whispered the word once, as if testing it, noticed. Then at full voice, he stopped. He noticed. She drove herself to church on Sunday. She drove the Sonata, 4 new tires. The car was her own again, the way it had always been, and the way it was going to keep being for a while longer. If this story found something in you, if you believe that sometimes the most important thing is for someone to notice what needs doing and do it, share this today with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss the next story. And leave a comment. Do you know someone who's been managing alone, quietly, competently, without asking, for longer than they should? Or has someone noticed something in your life that you hadn't gotten around to saying? Tell us. Type noticed in the comments if this one reached you. Because some people notice. And noticing is where everything starts.